Welcome to My Morning Cup, a podcast produced by Costa Media Advisors and brought to you by the generous support of the Tennessee Valley Authority. To learn more about TVA's impact on our community, follow TVA on Instagram at TVA and on Twitter X at TVA News. My Morning Cup, where we have interesting conversations with genuine people. I'm Mike Costa, your host. My guest this week is Father Dale Hall of the CHATT Foundation. He's better known as the chaplain of the streets. We spoke to Father Dale last year about this same time to learn more about his career and how that led him to serving those most in need. Father Dale, welcome back to My Morning Cup. Before we get serious, remind me, what's in your morning cup?
Usually dark blend coffee and a little bit of cream.
Regular milk, regular cream, oat, almond?
Heavy cream.
Yeah?
Yeah. So dark coffee, heavy cream.
Yeah. Well, seriously, though, I'm glad you're back. And I want to talk about, obviously, the CHATT Foundation. But just to refresh everyone, talk a little bit about yourself in terms of how you got to the CHATT Foundation. We talked about your family history of being teachers and becoming an Anglican priest, but how does all that lead to serving the homeless?
Sure. Well, where I'm at now really is a product of where I've been. And so I spent several years in social services in my younger career. And then I was full-time in ministry for a couple of decades. And then about 8 years ago, had the opportunity, was asked if I wanted to come into the CHATT Foundation, the community kitchen at that time, and do a Thursday morning chapel service, and began there. And then in 2020, had the opportunity to come on and be the chaplain there part-time. And it's gone from there. What was very part-time is pretty much full-time now. And we do that Thursday chapel service still. We're doing a Sunday morning chapel for people in the cafeteria. And my day is just being available, walking around quite a bit, having conversations with people. If people have a need, or if they've had a particularly rough morning, they can stop by, they can ask for prayer, ask for encouragement, and always there to try to lend those things.
On the chapel service, is that open to anyone that just wants to come by? Like
Yes.
Someone listening to this and they go, you know what, I'm going to check that out.
It's open to everybody, and it's also hopefully just like ecumenical enough so that everybody feels at home.
What time is that?
9 o'clock on Thursdays and 8 a.m. on Sundays.
Now, when you first went to the community kitchen, it was to really start the Anglican service more than anything else?
Right.
Were you doing anything with the homeless community at that time, or was this all kind of new to you?
It wasn't new. I'd volunteered over the course of the decades. And then, as I said, early on, I spent several years working with kids, runaway shelters, also homeless families with another organization in town. And so, I ran a homeless shelter for families back in the late 90s.
Did anything surprise you when you first started at the community kitchen / CHATT Foundation, or you got there and you said, wow, this is more than I thought, or wasn't expecting this?
I think just the volume, right?
Yeah.
Of people coming through the doors is quite surprising. And all of the services that they offer there, anything from laundry to foot care to meals, phones, a mail service, all kinds of things, clothing, shelter. there's so many things that go on at the CHATT Foundation. That's kind of why they tweaked the name. It was always known as the Community Kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody understood, oh, they feed people there. And yes, anybody can come in. You could come in, I could come in right off the street, and you will be served a hot plate of food, usually by a very cheerful volunteer, and hot coffee in the morning. And so I was just really surprised as you get into the depths of it and see the number of things that they do. So they kind of changed the name to an umbrella of the CHATT Foundation. And the CHATT stands for Center for Homeless Advancement Today and Tomorrow.
I don't think I know. I never knew that. I bet a lot of people didn't know that.
Right. That's the impetus behind the name change. And, we have a employment, let's just call him an employment guru who's working with people. And so he's working with people to help them find jobs, find places that are hiring, help work on resumes and things like that. So that's a lot of the stuff that's going on that people don't know about that we want them to know about.
Well, when I went over last spring and you showed me around, I was really surprised by the depth of the services. It's a big campus, and it's not just, as the old name said, a community kitchen. It's not just a kitchen.
Right.
You walk in, there's a day room. Off the day room, there's showers. Over by the showers, there's a laundry. Around the corner is a clothing store. And, you've just got so much going on there that it is a center that if someone is looking for help, can find help.
That's right. Going back to that employment piece, they're doing job fairs and they're having some really good success in getting people placed in jobs, and that's great.
What does that look like? And what I mean by that, because I'm trying to think of the average person listening to this. When you say getting a homeless person employment, is it day laboring? Is it manual labor?
Sure.
Is it matched up to what their skills may be? That you have someone who ran into a patch of bad luck, and you're trying to help them get back to where they were.
Right. Well, if you think about it, when you fill out a job application, what are some of the questions on that job application? What's the first 2 or 3 questions?
Well, obviously your name and your home address and your Social Security, not even Social Security anymore, but your home address.
Yeah, what happens if you're homeless?
Right.
But because the CHATT Foundation is there, they do have an address they can receive mail at. Because it's there, they do have telephones that they can use. And so some of the barriers, it's still barriers enough, but some of the barriers are taken away so that people can access what they need to apply for jobs, to receive messages, and to get in there and get at it.
I never thought of that in terms of being a place that can give you an address. Because as you said, you go try and fill out a job application, you don't give an address, you're not going to have a lot of luck.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's the little things really that sometimes we don't think about. It's like, oh yeah, that'd be a problem.
Do you have any idea how many people per day are going through there or taking advantage of the services?
I am not sure. I know as far as breakfast goes, there's usually about 150 people who come through for breakfast. So I would imagine that's a ballpark number. But, come lunch, you've got different people who come in for lunch because, a lot of those people who had breakfast, they're out working, right? Other people come in for lunch. It's kind of hard to really put your finger on an exact number, but ballpark, like I said, for breakfast, there's 150 people there. So that's a good start as far as understanding the potential.
It's a big need on a daily basis.
Right.
And we're recording this on a day where the high temperature is in the 30s. And I would imagine this time of year, the cold weather just exacerbates that number.
It does. It does. Our warming shelter's been open, I think, just about every night this week, and therefore they've probably served more than 150 people for breakfast. It's been a lot of people for breakfast this week.
I want to try and put a bit of a face on homelessness and the people being served, but I don't want to point out anyone specifically. Can you kind of give an overview of someone who would be served by the CHATT Foundation who may be homeless, what their story may be, what their background may be? Is there a typical, again, I'm just going to go off of, some things that some stereotypical things. Well, they're homeless, they don't want to work, they don't want to do this or that, but it's not that easy.
It's not that simple. It's not that easy. You can't pigeonhole someone into a particular stereotype because it's all different. Mm-hmm. You've got families at the McClellan shelter.
And I don't think a lot of people know that. You got a school bus coming to pick up kids, don't you?
That's right. We've got school buses picking up kids, taking them to school every day. We have intact families at the McClellan shelter. We've got single moms at McClellan shelter. We've got grandparents at McClellan shelter with their grandkids. It's a real mix. You've got people, you've got disabled veterans. You've got those with a mental disability or some type of other disability going on, physical disability. You've got people who are just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
We see a lot of young ones on the street, and it may be a situation where, they were asked or told to leave, their parents' or grandparents' house, and it's like it's time for you to go make it on your own, and they end up down at the street. And so trying to help them navigate becoming an adult.
Well, and you talked about early in your career, you worked with a lot of runaways.
That's right.
I would imagine that makes up a certain size of your population too.
It does. Let's see those young kids, young faces come in, and but the cool thing is to see when they do get their own apartment or get that job, get other things going on. Another aspect, the CHATT Foundation does hire, if you look, say, maybe over the course of 4 or 5 years, they do hire a lot of people who have come in off the street and put them to work in the recycling program or the thrift store or some other aspect of services there. And people will work those jobs short term or long term until they're ready to move on and get something that maybe pays better, maybe moves up. And so that's really interesting to me. I find that fascinating that they can do that and that they have people that have come in and kind of worked the program, so to speak, and then they work with the agency for a while, doing good work, taking in donations at the front desk, working in the kitchen. There's quite a few places where they hire and put people to work right there till they move on to something better.
Well, you said something important, and I'd like you to talk a little bit more about it, working the program, not that there's a specific step by step, but someone's coming in off the street and they're probably in rough shape, need a lot of help. What is that process of someone coming in and going through the steps to be more responsible or to
Sure.
do those things and take one of those jobs of gathering donated goods or whatever they may be.
Sure. It kind of depends on the individual and where they're at. But a lot of people may not know this, but we also run two shelters. One is St. Catherine's for women and St. Matthew's for men, out of two of your primary downtown churches. They opened up a space. This is years running now, for a certain number of individuals to be able to be sheltered there. While they're sheltered there, they are really worked with as far as getting employment, getting everything that they need together, while also continuing to work on housing. So there is some mentorship going on. There is some oversight going on with people to help them take step 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. That's really good.
Yeah. So it gets them advanced to take, not, it's easy to say taking care of yourself, but it is a process.
It is.
I want to go back to talking about the kids, because you were talking about applying for a job and not having a home address. These kids don't have a home address and they're going to school. And I don't think the people who travel 11th Street, as some people are going to be uncomfortable driving by the CHATT Foundation and might drive a little faster.
Right.
And they're passing, what they don't know is kids waiting on a school bus.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, to slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you don't know. You've got people in wheelchairs. You've got people who are disabled, so they are not fast.
Yeah.
And then you've got kids on school buses and different things like that. So it would really be good to slow down and take it easy. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Just take it a little bit slower on 11th Street.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm struggling for words here, but those of us who have not interacted with people in need like that, I think don't put a human face on it. Don't put a relationship on it to where it's better for me to go by with blinders on.
Right.
And the quicker, the better. Yeah. And what I wanted to do in talking to you today was try and put a little bit more of a face on it, not just because it's the season. Yes, because it's the season, but we should really be thinking about this all the time. Because I would imagine you've had some people come through there who are thriving today.
Right, right. I think what you encounter is you encounter people that you're really not that different from. If you're a Tennessee fan, there's going to be Tennessee fans in the crowd. If you're an Alabama fan or a Georgia fan, as a believer, as a Christian, I've had a lot of conversations on the street with people about Jesus and how much they love Jesus and things like that. We basically have had revival on the streets here and there. And, you name it, movies, just life.
Well, people are people. People have interests. People want to talk about the things that interest them.
That's right.
And
favorite foods.
I don't think we always apply those commonalities to people in need like that.
Right.
And because I know I'm guilty of it.
Well, yeah. We're just a little scared of what the unknown is. Right?
Yeah. That's a good point.
I think that's probably one of the biggest blessings that I've received from being able to work and do what I do, is to see humanity in people. You can read stories about St. Francis, and that happened to him as well. He looks around at all the poor he's surrounded by and stuff, and realizes that he is in the presence of God and in the presence of holiness by being in the presence of these poor around him. That's pretty astounding. And it kind of takes a little bit to open your eyes to that and to say, okay, I may feel like I don't have a lot in common with this person, but we're both a child of God.
Yeah, I think that's probably, not that I struggle with it. It's just that you don't think deep enough to know that. And what I mean by that, it's easier. And I'm going to go back to what I said before. It's easier to ignore.
Yeah.
What is the Matthew verse? I don't know the exact number, but yeah, you could tell I was raised Catholic because we didn't read the Bible. We were given epistles that said, this is what you're going to.
Matthew 25.
Yeah. See, we didn't pull our Bibles out in a Catholic Mass.
In Matthew 25, Jesus identifies himself with the poor. Mm-hmm. And they're like, when did we see you hungry? When did we see you naked? When did we see you thirsty? And Jesus says, whenever you've done it for one of these, you've done it for me. And so, one, he identifies himself with the poor strongly right there. It's like, if you've done this for the poor, you've done it for me. And then he also pretty much commissions the church on what the church should be doing. You know, feed the poor.
Yeah.
Clothe the naked. Give somebody a cup of cold water.
Seems pretty simple.
We make it difficult, though.
Boy, don't we? And speaking of making it difficult, can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges you face, the CHATT Foundation faces, from the current state of our healthcare system?
Sure.
And this need to discharge people from hospitals regardless if they have a place to go or not.
Sure. It's not uncommon for us to have people come to us pretty fresh out of the hospital. Some hospitals do better at connecting with us and letting us know what's going on, and sometimes that slips through the cracks. But it's pretty shocking sometimes. If you've got someone who's freshly amputated foot or something going on, they're in trauma, they're traumatized. They're traumatized physically, they're traumatized emotionally, they're traumatized mentally. And, rich or poor, we all need support in difficult times like that. And so just seeing those things, that's some of the hard stuff that we see on the street.
You're saying that someone who, and I'll just use this example, is in the hospital, had, let's say, a foot amputated, kind of reached the end of the hospital's service terms, and they arranged to have them dropped off.
Yeah. I don't know what policies they have in place or what they're operating under, but that does happen from time to time. People who are fresh out with like some type of heart surgery or some type of procedure, and they really could use a safe place to stay until they recover some. Now, we did run a pilot respite program for several months, and we've got a lot of good data from that, and we're taking that and trying to work with it to shed
what was
light
the program?
on that issue. Oh, it was called the respite program at the CHATT Foundation.
So someone like that would be discharged, and they really needed time to recover.
Ideally.
So what would a person like that do? What would the CHATT Foundation do with them?
Well, there's little individual rooms. It's off the street. It's safe. It's clean. Meals provided, laundry provided, care provided. And it's one of those gaps in services I think a lot of people and places are beginning to identify and say this is a real gap in services, especially when it comes to the poor and especially when it comes to the homeless, that when they have a serious medical condition or issue, they need a safe place to recover, and there isn't one.
And when you talk about that, I'm sitting here thinking of medical issues and things like that for someone like myself who's done okay in life. And that's a pretty traumatic thing if you're in pretty good financial shape and you have a home and you have a support system. I couldn't imagine how it would be if you don't have that.
Exactly. And most people are one medical condition away from, major financial issues or major instability in their lives because of that type of anything medical. Anything medical always comes with a big price tag on it. And though many of us could weather it, many of us, including 50% of your listeners, maybe one, but if they got hit with two things, would they be able to pay the mortgage? Would they be able to continue living life as they've been living life? There's no guarantees. No guarantees for really any of us. Life can turn really quick. I see people every day where that's happened. Astute, articulate, some of them well educated, and yet they had something go down, and we see them at the CHATT Foundation.
Well, we're all guilty of it. Can never happen to me, because you don't know until it happens. I feel that a place like the CHATT Foundation, I admire the work you guys are doing and the dedication to it, and I really would like other people to know about it.
Yeah.
So, not just in the season of the year, but what can the average person, the average Chattanoogan do to help?
I actually made notes on this.
Good, because we need a good list.
Let's hit three things. Advocate for affordable housing.
Yeah. And I was at a meeting at City Hall not too long ago. I know we've finally updated some zoning rules that allows more density and some more affordable housing. I mean, it's a give and take. People don't necessarily want the density, but if you want affordable housing, you need the density. And that won't necessarily solve the problem of homelessness, but it's a step in the direction that needs to be.
It's the direction we need to be going.
Right.
That's for families, individuals. That's for veterans. That's for people who are disabled but could function on their own with some small assistance. That's the direction we want to be going. Two, I would encourage anyone to volunteer. Volunteer at a helping agency. CHATT Foundation's a great agency. There are other agencies in town. Get involved in being part of the solution. Volunteer a few hours a year at one of these places. Get engaged. Get to know the stories, get to know the agency and what's going on, and get to know the people that they serve. I would always encourage people to do that.
If I could just add on to that, I think that's such an important part of getting to know the stories, getting to know the people, because that's when you build the commonalities.
Right.
And that's when you look across the table and you say, you know what? Dale and I have a lot in common.
Right.
We're not much different. The biggest difference is I have a home, he doesn't.
Right. Absolutely. So, yeah, get involved, volunteer, take part. Then the last thing I would say, practice giving. One of the early church fathers said, if you've got 2 coats in your closet, give one away.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple stuff. It goes back to John the Baptist taught the same thing. They came to him. It's like, what do we need to do? It's like, well, if you've got 2 shirts, give one to somebody that doesn't have one. So John the Baptist was giving the people who were asking him questions very simple, applicable advice on how to be a part of the solution, right? So practice giving, whether it's closed or whether you've got a nice big bank account and you can put some cha-ching on the table. That's great too. Bring it,
Well, and to your point, money's needed, but it's not the only thing.
Right.
Yeah, because we all got a closet full of stuff that you look at a pair of pants, and I know I do this all the time. I look at a pair of pants and say, I'll get in those again one day. And they sit there for 3 or 4 years.
That's right.
Where you could take them down to the CHATT Foundation and it goes to the thrift store, right? And then
exactly. It's like, buddy, you've had those since 1984. You need to just give it up.
They're coming back, I swear. What are some of the most common needs in clothing? I've always heard socks and shoes and things like that, and particularly this time of year, coats. But in general, as someone's looking at not necessarily going out and buying some new things, but when you're cleaning your closet up.
Everything, I will say, and us men are the worst. We don't give anything away, but that's the biggest need. Because we men usually don't give anything away, we always have like barely anything for men in the clothing store. And we do have people trying to get to work and trying to, just basically be clothes. So if you've got clothes that you could give away, give them. That's great. And it's everything, absolutely underwear, socks, but also men's clothes, women's clothes, anything. Everything is accepted.
You're talking about St. Francis and John the Baptist. Why have we made religion so difficult when it's as simple as if you have an extra coat, give them the extra coat?
Yeah.
I mean, I tend to simplify things too much, but it seems like we put up all these barriers and rules, and you got to do this and you got to do that, when it's as simple as if you have an extra coat, give them an extra coat.
I think somewhere inside everybody knows it. I mean, you could ask anybody, what's the church supposed to look like? They can tell you. You take care of the poor, you feed the hungry. You don't charge people to hear the word. Stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, pretty simple, isn't it?
But so everybody knows, everybody can tell you what the church is supposed to look like. But I think those reminders from, it's like, oh yeah, John the Baptist did keep it simple, didn't he?
Yeah.
Jesus kept it simple. Church fathers, Martin Luther King kept it simple.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is it? Well, it's simple. Just do it.
Take care of your brother.
Yeah.
So I know we're coming up on December 21st. You want to talk about the Night of Remembrance?
Sure. On the 21st, usually on the 21st, we keep the memorial for the homeless, and that's the longest night of the year, winter solstice. And on that day, usually about 10 o'clock in the morning, we'll have a memorial, a remembrance service for all the homeless community that we've lost that year. This year, it's actually going to be on Friday, the 20th.
Okay.
And that will be at the CHATT Foundation in the community center of the CHATT Foundation. There will be a little bit of music. We will read the names. We will remember those we've lost and give them back to God.
Any idea how many people we've lost this year?
I don't know what the number is this year. I know the past couple of years we've been well above 100 and not too far away from 200.
More than 100 in the Chattanooga area of homeless people who have died on the streets.
Yes.
I find that shocking, and I find it shocking because, and I was in the media business. Those aren't reported. I mean, in the media. Yes, some agency is reporting that.
It's the health department.
But it's not something the average person is aware that we've got more than 100 people dying on the streets every year. It's 2 a week or more. That hits hard.
It does. They've been doing that memorial for several years. I don't know how many, at least 20.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the best things we can do to keep reality real. Yeah, we get so sidetracked with the shiny last new thing. But understanding that something that, such as housing, that could be so easy to solve and so easy to diminish those numbers, those names that we're going to read.
It's more of an individual question for you. How do you keep yourself motivated? I think a lot of us look to religious people like yourself, a priest, and just take for granted you can fire yourself up every day to get out of bed, to drive downtown, to walk the streets, to help people. How do you do that?
That's one of those things I feel like I'm surprised by faith and not my own faith. At times, I'm surprised by the Spirit of God, really. This past Sunday was the first Sunday of Advent, and had a musician there, a young guy, who's just spending his time coming down to do some music for us at the CHATT Foundation. And one of the songs he sang, I just felt that the Spirit of God was there, and as me, as him. So a couple other people who come and help me, and the rest of the room was the poor. And they're there because, well, maybe a few want to get out from the cold, but several come just about every week to hear some scripture taught and to receive communion and to participate in a worship service. And it's sometimes those little moments, it really is kind of like the St. Francis thing, where the Spirit makes it dawn on you that God is here, I am here, this person is here, that person is here, and we are brothers and sisters, and there's no differentiation.
I would think one of the hardest things in the homeless community is that sense of community, because everyone's individually homeless, but what CHATT Foundation, what you're providing, is a sense of bringing people together for a community.
Sure. It's called the Community Center for a reason.
Yeah.
And there is a good sense of community there. You do see people taking care of each other. And I think that's something everyone should volunteer and also observe on their own. Mm-hmm. It'll light a fire in your heart.
Well, and the fire in the heart is so important to just connect one-on-one with each other and to know that we may have different socioeconomic circumstances, but we're really just the same people. And I would bet, and not sure how I was going to ask this question to you, but you've probably seen the best of humanity in some of the worst situations.
Yeah.
I want to wrap this up in a way that allows us to put a bit more of a face on it. My typical last question is, what would you tell your 25-year-old self is important for a happy life? But what do you tell those young 25-year-olds who are being served by the CHATT Foundation that give them some hope at a happy life? And I'm assuming their life's not happy just because they're not homeless, but they may be very happy. I don't know.
You see a lot of resilience, for sure. I think we worry a whole lot. I think we worry about money a whole lot. I think we're taught to worry about money a whole lot in our culture. And money is important. But also, there's only so much you can achieve by worrying. And that's usually not much, really. Mm-hmm. I think as long as we just try to go forward the best we can. I mean, I remember myself at 25, and guess what? It's worked out. The fact is, it's worked out better than I could have ever imagined. I could not imagine living a different life than what I am living right now. And that's a good thing.
I love that answer. And I'm so glad you said it, because I'm a guy that has worried about money from day one. And all it does is make you miserable. You can't change the past. You can't worry about the future. You just got to take what comes at you. And for the most part, it will work out. And it will work out better than you thought. And I guess that's where it goes back to faith.
Yeah. 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 Some things don't work out at all.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's always tomorrow.
Well, and a lot of times those things that don't work out weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
What's the something about unanswered prayers are some of the best things that can happen to you.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, do you want to close with anything else about the CHATT Foundation, or that anyone else can do?
Let's just say, since we're coming up on Christmas now, the 26th is the Feast of Stephen. And I always come back to the words of that song. It says, "He who now will bless the poor shall himself find blessing." And I think there's a truth in that you can't run away from. If you bless the poor, the Lord's not going to let that go unanswered. He's going to bless you some way, somehow in your life. And hopefully it's something that is so intangible, but brings so much joy and peace to your heart that it's worth absolutely everything.
It's a great message. Dale, Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks for listening to My Morning Cup, a podcast by Costa Media Advisors. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend. I release a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.